next talk is Hannah Tanquary, Innovating Under Constraints, Aspera's Path to Launch. So you can use this.
Hello, I am Hannah Tanquary, and I am the project systems engineer for the Aspera small sat mission. I'm first going to just give some background on the project and then a brief update on the state of the project as of now. And then the second half will be kind of a summary of some of the challenges that we've faced and how we've addressed them so far from my perspective as systems engineer and also project manager. So challenge is a running theme on this project. And in fact, it's right there in the name. So Aspera is a single instrument about the size of a mini fridge containing a UV spectrograph, which has been designed to study galaxies. And it was one of the inaugural projects chosen for the NASA Pioneers program, which was developed with the goal of funding lower cost, higher risk projects. It is also the first NASA-funded mission which is fully managed, owned, and operated by the University of Arizona. So our team, so another goal of Pioneers is to train that next generation of scientists and engineers. So we are a relatively young team on average, which we're also guided by a number of experienced personnel in those key positions. And you'll see on this chart in blue and purple, our early career academic and technical staff and our amazing grad students there in orange, and then a small army of undergraduates in green there. So Aspera has been designed to do a single task very well, and that is to create the first maps of the warm-hot phase of the circumgalactic medium, which is this highly diffuse region surrounding galaxies that you can kind of see in this image here. And these maps, we hope, will provide some vital insights towards our understanding of galaxy formation and evolution, and thus also star and planet formation and evolution. And so our baseline mission goals are to observe 10 galaxies in single deep pointings, and of those galaxies to create maps of 3 of them, specifically of that diffuse region in the outer regions of the galaxies. And so how is this accomplished? Just a brief design overview. So our spacecraft bus is being provided by the University of Toronto Space Flight Laboratory, and our instrument sits in the top there. You can kind of see our bore sight peeking out there, like 2 little eyeballs. And then this is the primary and the only instrument in the spacecraft. The upper portion contains the optical system, which is a dual channel spectrograph with a single detector, and then the bottom is our electronics deck. And if we separate out the top and bottom there, we can kind of see our optical system, including an off-axis parabolic mirror, actually 2 of those, slit, grating, and then finally going to the detector. You can also see some of our baffling system there, which is meant to mitigate the stray light situation. And then, so what is the latest? Where are we at right now? So actually all the way back in June of 2023, we did pass our critical design review. We haven't had a major review since then. Our next one will be the flight readiness review. And then last fall, we did achieve TRL 6. So for Pioneers class, all of our subsystems must meet technology readiness level 6 or higher. So basically just proof that we can environment. And in our case, that meant we needed to perform thermal vacuum and vibration testing, and that was all done here. We had some, this was just for our electronic subsystem. We are using some industrial components, which despite being effectively the same as flight qualified parts, they don't have flight heritage. And so here you can see our electronics lead, Dave Hamara, prepping our electronics for TVAC testing just over there at the Kuiper building. And then there's Bill and Dan prepping for our Z-axis vibe at the ARB. And you've seen this vibe table a few different times today, I think. So following that, we were able to integrate our flight electronics into the payload. And here this was the first time we were able to kind of do a full end-to-end test, a full suite of tests to exercise the electronics with the flight detector. And we went all the way from the detector through the electronics, through the ground data system, through the science pipeline, and then we're able to view the data in our science user interface. So that was a huge milestone with some very fascinating issues that cropped up along the way. Catch me afterwards if you want to talk about that. So, and then again, all of our mechanical parts have been fabricated and service treated, and they are ready for integration. This is the real picture in the clean room. You can see our baffles there. We were doing a fit check of those baffles. So as of now, the integration and alignment process is currently in full swing in the clean room. And here you can see our alignment and calibration lead, Afaq Khan, who's actually sitting right here. You're going to hear from him next. And our assembly and integration lead, Bill Verts, and they're just really in the thick of it, staking the mirror and grading mounts after they had been flight torqued. And our flight software is also progressing very nicely. So this is a screenshot of the brand new science user interface, the version 2, which was written by our software undergrads under the guidance of Sanford Selznick of Ascending Node Technologies. This is how we'll be able to visualize our science data as it comes in. And we have tested it from nose to tail. Sanford made me say that joke. Additionally, our spacecraft bus is complete at SFL in Toronto. So this is our actual bus that we're going to be in. Our instrument will sit just there in the top where there's a nice empty space. And then at the bottom, you can see the Aspera ring interface that will allow us to go onto the rideshare rocket as a secondary payload. And then lastly, then our next phase coming up fairly soon will be our instrument level environmental testing. And so then in this next section, I'm going to talk about some of the challenges the project has faced. And these are coming from kind of my perspective as a systems engineer. Again, I want to talk about the challenges and then kind of how we've faced them. I think this is, varies from project to project. Your results may vary, but I want to talk about those. So on the programmatic side, as every project ever in history has, we face this balance between time, cost, and scope. When the time and the cost are limited, yet our scope must still include the delivery of groundbreaking science. And then the next challenge is, I believe, mostly a function of kind of the newness of the Pioneers program in general, and that we're kind of charting the path here as the first class of pioneers. That this word tailoring has kind of become our least favorite word because we're often advised to utilize documentation that was written for these much higher cost, much lower risk programs, and then tailor it to our needs, right? Take what we need from it. And that's been a big challenge. On the technical side, I think we face a lot of challenges. The two biggest ones in my mind are our extremely tight alignment tolerances, and then the sensitivity of our optics to contamination, particularly from hydrocarbons and from moisture. And here you can see our payload in its little safe box that it lives in at all times. So we can purge it with nitrogen, even when we are in the process of aligning, which is pretty cool. So how are we addressing these challenges? It's through a combination of technologies that have been available to us and processes that we've decided to implement. So at a very high level, the technology that enables programs like Pioneers itself is this rideshare technology where many of these smaller secondary payloads can kind of hitch a ride with a primary payload and do this for a tiny fraction of the cost that it would take to procure an individual launch. Advances in ultraviolet detector technology have enabled us to create an incredibly sensitive instrument that is also relatively low maintenance. And then advances in optical coating technology and also overcapping technology have allowed us to achieve the reflectances that we need for these types of observations, and then also protect those high reflectance coatings from degradation due to humidity exposure. And then again, we also have computer generated holograms, which make it possible to achieve our very challenging alignment tolerances. And then I want to touch on some of the processes that we've either implemented or just are kind of due to the nature of the Pioneers program. So remember how I said that one of our main challenges was lack of NASA oversight. That's also kind of a good thing in a way. Oversight often means dedicating a lot of resources to paperwork. And don't misunderstand me at all. I love paperwork. I love documentation. It's kind of my job. But on Pioneers, we're a lot more free to decide for ourselves what's most important for us and then spend time and resources doing that, right? And then you saw in previous slides that we have a very young team, lots of students that are being mentored by more senior staff and academic. This, of course, also at the end of the day allows us to keep costs a little bit lower. We also wear many hats, which we apply our diverse skills to fulfill multiple roles. So we also decided early on to adopt a very lean spares policy. And so this means that we don't have the level of redundancy that is typical for some larger projects, except where we have determined that it could really be a showstopper. For example, this device is what opens the window of our detector on orbit. So if it fails, we can't do the mission. This particular device was a huge percentage of our hardware budget, because it has extensive flight heritage and it has built-in redundancy. So that's just one example where, we chose to spend the money and apply that redundancy, but for the most part, we don't have that level. So we've incurred risk with this posture, obviously, but also been able to meet our hardware budget. We also reduced early on our number of optical channels from 4 to 2, and we also de-scoped our propulsion system. And we made those decisions early on, and that did help us, I think, to save money before we were locked into our spacecraft contract. I think that was pretty vital. And I am running out of time, but the next couple of points are kind of related, and they have to do with sort of the administrative side of things, and they have to do with kind of distributing the responsibilities that might normally be taken on by a dedicated staff person or a dedicated team, because we don't have the resources to have a dedicated person managing those systems. We distribute those responsibilities. So we're using tools like SharePoint, which allow the team to basically help themselves and to have access to a shared knowledge base that they can access from anywhere, including in the clean room. Everyone on the team can contribute to this shared knowledge base. And it takes a lot of the administrative pressure off of systems engineering, off of configuration management, allows people to kind of manage a lot of that stuff on their own. And then I think I'll skip on to the last point that I've come to learn, which is having this DIY mindset. And I've come to learn that this is a value that is typical of pretty much any spaceflight project, regardless of the budget, because that's just the nature of spaceflight, I think. But I have a few examples of what that's looked like specifically on Aspera, and I think it's even more vital on a resource-limited project. And it just means developing this habit of first asking, how can we do this ourselves? How can we fix this ourselves? And with that, I will take any questions if I've got time.
Question.
Do you guys have propulsion? And if not, how have you constrained LEO kind of affecting your guys' common ops?
Sure. So we do not have propulsion. That was one thing we decided early on to de-scope. And I mean, the way it affects our ConOps in general. So the first thing to note is we don't actually know our launch yet. So we don't actually know what our orbit will be. In altitude, we've asked for LEO, obviously, sun synchronous orbit, but we don't have the ability to change that at all. We're going to get what we get with the ride share. And so the details of the ConOps, I'd have to reach out to our ConOps team a little bit more, but you know, in the beginning, we did a huge number of simulations with them, and kind of came up with a whole series of cases for like what our situation would look like at any given altitude, essentially, and to just be able to convince ourselves that we can do our science mission basically anywhere. And that was a conscious decision to make us more attractive to a larger number of rideshare providers, basically. Yeah.
One more, if not, that's good.
No, go ahead.
Are you guys doing your data down?
So we are using KSAT. Yeah, so it's Svalbard and Punta Arenas, actually. Yeah. So and S-band up and down. Yeah. So.
All right. Thank you very much.